The Kentucky Small Business Development Center is a statewide, nationally accredited program that provides no-cost, confidential business coaching and training services. Whether you're just getting started or are ready to expand, we have the tools, resources, and expertise to help you succeed. We're part of a national network, America's SBDC, with over 1,000 centers across the nation. To learn more about how the Kentucky SBDC can serve you, please visit KentuckySBDC.com or email us at info@KentuckySBDC.com. You can also reach us by calling 888-414-7232. Thank you for joining today's webinar. The chat feature is available for you to ask questions and interact with today's speaker. Please take a moment to introduce yourself and where you are watching from today.
Welcome, everybody, to another Wednesday webinar. Today we have some awesome guests. I've been so lucky to meet a bunch of really powerful brain trusts with that know a lot about cybersecurity. And cybersecurity, as you know, is something that's on everybody's minds these days. And you may think you're too small to be targeted, but that is not the case. So we thought in celebration of Cybersecurity Month, which is October, that we would bring these folks together for you to learn a bit about how to protect yourself from those criminals out there, because they are looking for you. So I'd like to introduce my great friend Gina Ginnall, who is a product development at professional vice president of product development at Mastercard. She's also a former university dean and one of the smarter people I know. So Gina, how are you?
Thank you, Dave. I'm doing great.
How about you tell us a little bit about you and introduce everybody else we have here today?
Absolutely. So I'm Gina Ginnall, and just as Dave has said, I'm Global Vice President of Product Management in the Cyber and Intelligence Solutions Group at Mastercard. And in my current role, I lead the Mastercard Trust Center that provides free cybersecurity, education, resources, and tools to help businesses just like yours secure their cyber ecosystem. Prior to joining Mastercard, I served as a dean at Lindenwood University, and part of that responsibility was overseeing the cybersecurity bachelor's and master's degrees for adult students. So also with us today is Rebecca Ledingham. She's a colleague, global vice president, and senior business leader of cybersecurity in cyber intelligence solutions at Mastercard. Prior to joining Mastercard, Rebecca was a cyber crime agent at Interpol in Singapore and at the United Kingdom's National Cybercrime Agency, the National Cybercrime Unit. She is a certified cyber intelligence system security professional. During this workshop, Rebecca will share best practices for securing your businesses and defending against cyber criminals. Also joining today is Monty Mcgee. Monty is the Associate Director of the Cyber Readiness Institute. Before joining CRI, he led the Bose Allen Hamilton's expert team supporting Department of Defense Chief Information Security Officers' cybercrime engagement with international allies and partners. He also served as a U.S. diplomat, where he managed strategic communications and outreach campaigns on cybersecurity and information technology. He brings a record of using innovative approaches to tackle complex cyber challenges to support defense, intelligence, and diplomatic cyber missions. During this workshop, Monty will share information about cybersecurity education and resources that can help small businesses like yours get cyber secure through the Cyber Readiness Starter Kit, the Cyber Readiness Program, and the Cyber Leader Certification Program. And Gill Thomas is joining us today as well. She's the Director of Engagement and Capacity and Resilience Program at the Global Cyber Alliance. Gill joined GCA in 2018 after spending her early career enjoying various roles within the telecommunications industry. She became interested in cybersecurity due to the devastating impact of cyber incidents across the globe. In her current role at GCA, she engages partners around a similar mission, protecting vulnerable communities against cyber risks that are used through the internet for malicious gain. She also drives change and addresses systemic cyber risk and enables a secure and trustworthy internet for all. During this workshop, Gill will share information about cybersecurity resources and tools that can help secure your business through the Global Cyber Alliance's Cybersecurity Toolkit for small businesses. So, to give you a little overview, we are here to help you secure the digital aspects of your business. This is important. It's just as important as locking your business's door at the end of the day. Only it's locking your digital footprint. As you grow your business and take steps to develop a website, manage customer and employee records on your computer, access online payments, and anything that you do for your business that is on a computer or on an internet connected device. It is crucial that you take steps to secure your business because cyber risks are growing. And as Dave mentioned at the start, many small businesses don't think that they can be a target for cybercrime. But that's not true because cybercriminals know that many small and medium-sized businesses don't have cybersecurity measures in place. So that makes many small businesses an easy target. And one thing that you need to remember is that trust is a choice. Building the trust that your customers have in your business and in you is a choice that you make because they are trusting and in the unknown aspects of your business. So maintain that trust by taking cybersecurity action. So it's my pleasure to introduce Rebecca, and she will talk about cybersecurity best practices. Take it away, Rebecca.
Thank you, Gina. So I'm hoping this is going to work. There we go. Okay. So as we've mentioned, you are a small business. The minute you decide to go into business for yourself, you probably think to yourself, I'm going to do this as cheaply as possible to make as much money as possible. The problem therein is that the minute you go on to Google, whether you are first on the search engine or 10th on the search engine, you are visible to everyone. And that includes cyber criminals. Now, they may not know your business, they may not have heard of your business, they may not have shopped at your business. But if you show up in any one of Google's search engines, then you are visible if a bad guy is to identify a company or a business that is running with a particular vulnerability, and that company is you. Now, as we know from the World Bank, 90% of global businesses are actually small businesses, and you create about 50% of global employment. In Mastercard, we transact for 40 million merchants, and 90% of those are you guys, small businesses. And we actually refer to you as level 4 businesses. You are the businesses that are quite often under the umbrella of a processor or an acquirer. We might not see you, but we know that you exist. And the exact same thing is true of the cyber criminal as well. Now, quite often when you set yourself up in business, you think the cheapest way to do that might be to process your own credit cards, and that isn't a good idea to do. You definitely want to find a company, be it the Squares or the Stripes or the PayPals of this world or Amazon Pays, who will take that responsibility off you. The last thing you want to touch as a brand new business is credit card data. And the problem with credit card data, sorry, this was, we've had some technical problems this morning. Just bear with me till I get to where I need to be. The problem with credit card data is that it has a value. Any kind of data that you have in your business has a value to a cyber criminal, and that is basically why they target you in the first place. And as a new business, whether you're a micro merchant or a small business, you are going to want to promote your business. You're going to want to market it. And the easiest way to do that nowadays is obviously social media. And whether you're a nano influencer or whatever it is, or an Instagrammer, you're probably going to be on about 10 to 15 social media platforms in order to get your business message out there, get your product and your brand visibility out there. But for every login that you have for a social media site, that has a value to a cyber criminal on the black market. And it starts at $65 plus. You're also going to have customer data. Once the customers start buying from you, you're going to want to know who they are. So you're going to ask them questions about themselves. You're going to have their email address. You're going to have their IP address. You're probably going to have their home address, their phone number. You might even have their date of birth. And actually, if you're involved in healthcare, you might even have their social security numbers. That is a huge amount of responsibility because a person's identity is absolutely priceless to them. And you are sitting on that information and you are now the custodian of that data. If you lose that data, it costs a consumer a huge amount of money, and it can be a pervading, ongoing problem forever. If once someone's personally identifiable information is out in the ether or the black market, it cannot be retrieved because they can't change their date of birth, they can't change their social security number. So customer data has a starting value of $35 plus, depending on how much of a profile the bad guy is able to obtain from the data that you are sitting on if they are to target you. You're also going to have employee data as you grow a little bit bigger as well. You're definitely going to have social security numbers and personally identifiable information, and often financial and healthcare information about employees. And that is worth $60 plus. And we know that a number of employees have started litigating against companies who lose their data. So it's really, really important that you treat all personally identifiable information that you hold about anyone as carefully as you would want your own identity kept. And lastly, you're going to have whatever it is that makes your business unique, that secret sauce. It might literally be a sauce that you don't want the recipe getting out there, because then that means that somebody else can copy you and take your business. And that may be priceless to you also. So the risk of holding data, the risk of being in business where cyber criminals is concerned is very, very significant. And we know that the bad guys want to obtain anything that you have in your company and they want to sell it. And the dark web is the place that most of them go to, but there are actually three parts to the internet. There's the surface web, which is Google, which is where your website is probably sitting. There is the deep web, which is where your bank login pages, email servers, and things like that sit. And then there is the dark web, or the deep web, it's sometimes called as well. And that is actually comprised of a lot of legitimate sites, but because there is a number of nefarious sites on there, it actually gets tarred with the same brush. But the dark web was set up for genuine purposes to actually enable dissidents in Iran and Iraq during the war to be able to get information out securely. And a lot of the major news and media outlets actually have legitimate sites on the dark web, and so do social media like Facebook. But unfortunately, it has been usurped by criminals, and this is where they go to sell the credit card information and the identity information that they obtain from businesses when they break into them. And it operates very much like a retail site. Companies can go on and, individuals go on and they go to sites like Joker Stash, which is actually no longer in existence. It was taken down earlier this year by law enforcement. And they basically pick the credit card numbers in a state that they may reside in. They put it in their cart and they check out. And after they check out, they can test that the card actually works. So quite often, if you see a $1 or a $2 transaction amount on your credit card statement for a business that you don't know about, it may be that your card is available on the black market and it's being tested to check its veracity before the bad guy then goes and hits it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on your upper limit. And we work with law enforcement in Mastercard. We don't want our credit cards on the black market. So as soon as we're aware that a merchant has been breached, we try to identify who that merchant is, and we get the banks to reissue those credit cards. Now, that's a costly process for the banks, but it means that those cards cannot be used by cyber criminals, and we don't want them to be used, because then they use them at your store, even if you weren't the victim. They order goods using those stolen or compromised credit cards. You send out the goods, and then the bank contacts you a few weeks later to say that that card was a compromised card, and they're doing a chargeback to you. You've lost the goods, and you now have to pay back the original card owner. So it's something to be very mindful of. So the ways in which you will expose yourself to cyber criminals are usually bad practices, actually. Let me just go back here a sec. And one of them is outdated application software. Whenever you put any kind of software onto your computer, it has an expiry date. It stops working after a period of time, and it stops being secure. So if it asks for an update, make sure it's updated. And that goes for your personal devices like your cell phones and things like that as well. We have a lot of small merchants use a software called Magento. Now, Magento's been around for a long time, but back in 2015, there was a security researcher who identified a number of vulnerabilities with it. And unfortunately, it's been playing catch up ever since. And there's about 300,000 small merchants use Magento on the free community edition. And I can't stress enough, if you are one of those merchants that uses Magento, you really need to be on top of your software patching for Magento, because there are a number of organized crime groups that specifically target merchants using Magento. But equally, if you're using a hosting provider, it might be GoDaddy or it might be Square or Stripe as part of your payment processing, you also need to be aware of what is happening. We have a tool in Mastercard that I can actually identify vulnerabilities that are visible on your external perimeter. And we very often see hosted companies that are supposed to be all singing, all dancing, and all bells and whistles running with vulnerabilities on your sites. So it's something that, regardless of whomever you use, you must be up to date with as well. And then obviously there are things like multi-factor authentication. You might actually get to the point where you have more than one business. You might start a franchise and you want to log into those other franchises. So you might use something like LogMeIn or some kind of remote desktop protocol. It's really important, if you use these kind of softwares, that you use multi-factor authentication, because this is like candy to the cyber criminals. If they know that you use an RDP solution and you're only using username and password, they will go after you with a password cracking software tool to try and get into your system as well. And then obviously phishing is the #1 methodology via which most cyber criminals will target you. And we see an awful lot of small businesses, particularly in the restaurant or food space, who get targeted with phishing emails saying, I ate at your restaurant, I got food poisoning, please see my attached receipt. When you click on the receipt, it downloads malware onto your computer. Now, that might be an innocuous email that you think, oh my God, you know, I really need to address this issue, but unfortunately, it's from a cyber criminal. And one of the things I would say on that point is, if you don't know and you've never met the person who is sending you an email, then do the triple checks on those emails before you click on anything. And I want to come to some tips and tricks that I want to share with you as well, and how you can avoid being a cybercrime victim. #1 is to use, wherever you possibly can, Apple Pay, Android Pay, or Google Pay. It is the most secure way to pay. It's done by a device, and so therefore your credit card information, your customer's credit card information, is not passed in the clear. And I've paid I pay this way myself, and I have to say, touch wood, it's been a very successful way for me, when I know that other people that have shopped at the same merchants who haven't used those devices have actually had their information compromised. Change your password as well, particularly if you've been traveling. If you've had to log on to hotel Wi-Fi or airport Wi-Fi or any kind of public Wi-Fi, make sure that when you return from your trip that you change your password. It is a really, really good idea to have theft identity protection if you are a small business. And there are a number of solutions that you can obtain for that. Mastercard does have a theft ID protection solution. I use it all the time myself. I was in Brazil. I didn't know that my device was connecting automatically to an open Wi-Fi, and there must have been malware on there. My email address was compromised. I had this solution, and it actually came back and told me that my email was on the black market. But this works for your credit card information, your social security number, your tax identity, passports, all sorts of things. This is definitely something that you want to invest in as a small business, because you want to be the first person to know that your identity has been compromised, because that usually gives you the indication that your customer's identity may also have been compromised. And we're seeing a number of incidences where the bad guys are breaking into businesses, they're stealing customer information, and then they're going after the customers with phishing campaigns as well. Don't allow yourself or your employees to use corporate email. If you have a business email address, do not allow it to be used for recreational, social purposes. If that email address gets compromised in a hack with one of those businesses, then you will be dealing with spam and phishing forevermore. I always recommend having more than one email address. So things like have an email address for banking, have an email address for online retail shopping, have one for personal correspondence, have one for trash. It's a good idea to keep different purposes segregated, particularly when you have a business as well. And there's no rule or law as to how many email addresses that you are permitted to have. You can have as many as you wish. The other thing I would say is that do not allow any employees to use personal devices. If they start working with your company, give them a corporate device, invest in a laptop for them, and lock down anything that they can use on that corporate laptop. If they want to access the internet, they'll use their own personal device as well. Always make sure you've got antivirus on your computer. I know a lot of people think I've got a Mac and it doesn't matter. It does matter when you are using your device for business purposes. The other thing that you need to consider when you're a small business is to have cyber insurance. There are some very, very cost-effective policies, but if you're hit with ransomware, it's going to put you out of business for days or weeks. And if you have cyber insurance, they can help you work with the cybercriminals, and also they can cover the cost of any damage to business or to revenue that has been caused by a cyber attack as well. There's something called the golden key, and that means that you should not use and do not use the same password for your PayPal account as your email account, as your eBay or Amazon account as well. What happens when a bad guy obtains information or data from a cyber hack? They actually go and use it in major merchants to see if they can find that same password and email combination elsewhere. And the same goes for leaving online comments. If you use your real identity and you use your real email address on online comments, the bad guys simply scrape that data. And if they are looking to see where you have been and where your footprint or your digital footprint is online, then they go to these sites and they know that you are probably a customer of that site. You've probably used your login data there, and then they will try to break into your account there as well. And some tips and tricks that I want to give you that are not actually on this slide are based on my own experience in law enforcement. When I was in law enforcement, I used to find small businesses in particular would have a customer that purchased a huge amount of goods, and then the card was subsequently declined. And they would go back to that customer and ask them to provide a new credit card. And sometimes the bad guy would respond with another credit card, which was also compromised. And then I've seen businesses go back 3 or 4 times. If a card is declined, it is not your responsibility to prompt the consumer to provide a genuine or another credit card. There's a high likelihood that the card is probably compromised in the first place. And then you will suffer the chargeback and you will suffer the loss of goods. So do not take the risk and do not take the chance. As you grow as well with your employees, you're going to want to give them limited use of the computer systems. So quite often, if you're growing, you give everybody admin access. That is not good. It's a bad thing to do. So there are apps that you can download to prevent access without authority. In Mastercard, we limit what sites people can actually go to on the internet, because we recognize that is where they are most likely to pick up malware. Equally, if we access our personal email on our computer device at Mastercard, we are not allowed to upload any documents to that site either. It's really important that you back up all your customer and your sales data. And depending on your size, you can purchase either an external hard drive if you're quite small and just overwrite it each week or month. But as you grow, you might want to purchase cloud space to do this. And therefore, you will need to back up your systems more frequently, because if you are hit with a ransomware campaign, then you are going to need to have that data open to you and accessible to get back online as quickly as possible. On a personal note as well, do not post information online about your children. You increase their exposure and their vulnerability. Quite often, if you're doing social media to attract people to your business, you might post family pictures and things like that. It's not a good idea to have that much information about you and your family out there, particularly when you're starting off. And equally, don't allow your children to publicly link their social media accounts to yours either, because they can innocently expose data about you that makes it easy for a cyber criminal to find you or exploit information about you. Don't sync your social media accounts as well. It might seem like it makes your life easier, but in all reality, you're increasing your exposure to phishing and cyber targeting. And you're also increasing the chances of you suffering identity theft by oversharing personal information. And then finally, I would say, do not leave Bluetooth always enabled. Turn it off when it's not in use. Sorry, and there's just one more thing I wanted to add, which is about DNA websites. A lot of people for Mother's Day, Father's Day like to give each other DNA testing kits. Great idea. However, a lot of the cyber criminals and the fraud criminals are actually using these sites to verify your identity. So you might want to use an alias. Your DNA is still your DNA. Your long lost sibling will still find you. But what you don't want to do is confirm who you are and who your mother is and etc., because a lot of those form security questions. So I think that's everything I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And next up, we have Monty Mcgee to talk about what is provided by the Cyber Readiness Institute. Thank you, Monty. And thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Gina, and great presentation, Rebecca. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the Kentucky Small Business Development Center, Mastercard, and the entire organizing team, as well as the participants for joining us today. Again, I'm Monty Mcgee with the Cyber Readiness Institute, or CRI, and we're excited to participate in this important event. So just a little bit about me. I know we covered this at the top, but my background spans diplomacy, intelligence, and defense industries. I'm a former diplomat and security consultant and have more than a decade of experience working on cybersecurity capacity building and foreign policy issues. And then just a little bit about CRIs at the top, and then we'll get into some more detail. So CRI is a global nonprofit that helps small and medium-sized businesses improve their cyber readiness by providing free, that's right, free practical tools and resources that focus on human behavior. And we focus on human behavior because we recognize the essential role that people play in securing an organization against cyber threats. End users still represent a major source of organizational compromise. And according to Stanford University, nearly 9 in 10 security breaches are caused wholly or in part from human error. And therefore, our goal at CRI is really to turn this traditional business weakness into a cybersecurity strength. And I want to take a few minutes and share key reasons why CRI focuses on small and medium-sized businesses, or SMBs, as a part of our global mission to enhance cyber readiness. We, at a very general level, see this as an opportunity to help secure the global supply chain. So first, there are millions of small and medium-sized businesses worldwide. According to Bank of America, 80% of businesses have less than 10 employees, and 95% have less than 100 employees. And depending on where you've traveled in the world, you've likely seen or met a small shop owner who employs a handful of workers and has a significant impact on their surrounding community. However, because 53% of cyber attack victims are in fact small businesses, that shop owner is likely to experience an attack at some point. CRI wants to help that shop owner not only prepare for, but also respond to and recover quickly from the attack when it occurs. The second point is that small and medium-sized businesses are facing challenges on multiple fronts right now. Globally, these businesses are struggling to keep their doors open as their nations combat the devastating effects of the pandemic. According to the Small Business Administration, every hour a small business is closing during the pandemic. And we all have heard about the difficulty many businesses are facing right now in terms of hiring and retaining talent. A new Manpower Group study found that 69% of employers globally report experiencing some difficulty filling roles due to a lack of skilled talent. And if these challenges weren't bad enough, cyber criminals are using pandemic-themed fraudulent schemes to fleece small businesses and medium-sized businesses of their hard-earned resources. Security researcher Cubware found that companies with less than 250 employees comprise the vast majority of ransomware targets. Now, some may still wonder after what you've heard so far, why would cyber criminals target a small business? Well, SMBs are targeted and used as gateways oftentimes and access points to larger companies as a part of the global supply chain. SMBs may not fully understand their threat landscape because they're busy enough focusing on managing their business as well as supporting their customers, which is why CRI resources are really designed for busy professionals. And finally, SMBs often lack the cyber readiness and resilience of larger businesses. While a corporation likely has the resources and expertise to recover from a major cyber incident, SMBs often lack the infrastructure, training, and resources to do the same. More than 77% of organizations don't have an incident response plan, and that number is much larger for small and medium-sized businesses. Therefore, SMBs are less prepared oftentimes to mitigate their cyber risk and manage cyber incidents once they occur. And according to a recent Cisco study, a mom and pop shop that brings in about $100,000 annually will likely lose 1/4 of their earnings or more from a major cyber incident. Now think about that for a second. 1/4 of your earnings fleeced as a result of a cyber incident. It's easy to see as a result why 67% of small businesses fail to recover following a cyber breach. Now, with kind of that doom and gloom, I want to just reassure you that there are steps you can take. This is not a hopeless, effort. So becoming cyber ready can feel difficult and overwhelming. However, there are key areas of focus to becoming cyber ready and resilient, and I want to just share a few of them. We call them at CRI our 4 core cyber issues, and they highlight the importance of strong authentication, defending against phishing, updating your software, and reducing USB use across your organization. And they're in response really to the realities you see on the screen. 63% of data breaches can be traced to weak or stolen passwords. However, 99% of account compromise attacks can be blocked simply by using MFA or multi-factor authentication. And so it's really important. I want to underscore this point. If you're not using multi-factor authentication across your accounts right now, it's so vital that you enable it today. 91% of cyber attacks start with a phishing email compromise, and Rebecca talked a lot about that and gave some great examples. 77% of attacks exploit vulnerabilities already in software. And so having that software update schedule and making sure that you're updating your software is so important. And over a quarter of malware infections originate from infected USBs. So if anyone in your organization is still using USBs or removable media, it's important, one, that you train about appropriate use, but then as you can, consider moving over to cloud storage and data transfer through the cloud. CRI carefully guides businesses through these core 4 programs, or core 4 issues rather, with a range of free and accessible guidance. And I'll just outline some of that guidance on the next slide. So we encourage you to take these low to no cost steps immediately to enhance your cyber readiness. Focusing on human behavior, that's a step you can take today by looking inwardly at not only your own practices, but those of your workforce. Strengthening your authentication practices, and I talked about MFA and enabling and the importance there, as well as ensuring that you understand when and how to update the software that's essential to your business. Training is so important. And there are a number of training tools out there, but CRI, GCA, other organizations offer resources that you can use to train on phishing and a range of other threats, reducing USB use, as I said, and finally developing and testing an incident response plan. And this is really taking the time before an incident occurs to think about who you need to contact, whether it be your stakeholders, your key partners, your customers, if you have regulatory requirements, reporting as a result of those things, but really thinking about that on the front end and then documenting it as a part of your incident response plan, and then going that extra step and actually testing it and ensuring that what you say you want to do if an incident occurs, you're actually able to do if that kind of incident occurs. Now, I want to talk briefly about a couple of our flagship programs. The first is our Cyber Readiness program, and it's really for organizations that need a little bit more than the basics. The program lays out practical steps that you can take now to assess and improve your cyber readiness. It will help you understand what it means to be cyber ready and guide you through creating a culture of awareness within your organization. It's free and easy to use, and you can track your progress. Many of our users complete the program in less than 1 week. However, you're able to work through it at your own pace. Once you complete it, you'll receive a cyber readiness certificate. And this shows your customers, your partners, your suppliers that you've taken steps to create a culture of cyber readiness throughout your organization. And we're currently working with multinational companies as well as DoD suppliers to implement the Cyber Readiness program across their supplier networks. I also want to share a little bit about our Cyber Leader Certification program. This is a personal professional credential that can be achieved after completing the Cyber Readiness program. This program requires about 4 hours of learning time and will enhance your understanding of creating and sustaining a cyber ready culture within your organization. The program walks through realistic steps to managing people, the processes that you have within your organization, as well as the technology that you're using for your business critical operations. And it's designed for a range of small and medium-sized businesses. And so I want to be extremely clear here. There are no prerequisites nor costs to you for using CRI programs, and we have resources that connect to users with low to no cyber experience. We work with our members, our champions, and our partners, which represent a broad range of sectors, to identify small and medium-sized business risks, as well as help those businesses mitigate those risks. Through our networks, we reach more than 2 million SMBs worldwide. And our downloads of the free resources and tools I talked about have exceeded over 140,000. And through a series of global webinars, we have reached more than 90,000 individuals in just the past 2 years with our resources. And so I want to encourage each business represented on this webinar to consider taking advantage of these resources, as well as the ones you'll hear soon from Gill, to directing your partners to do the same, because by doing that, by taking those steps, you truly are raising your cyber readiness, as well as securing the readiness of your partners. And if you're interested in learning more, you can visit becyberready.com. And just to kind of wrap up, I want to again thank the Small Business Development Center, Mastercard, and all of the organizers of the webinar for the opportunity to share a little bit about CRI's work to enhance cyber readiness across small and medium-sized businesses. And I look forward to any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Monty, very much for that very engaging and important presentation. Lots of good stuff at the Cyber Readiness Institute. Thank you. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Gill Thompson, and she's going to talk with us about the great resources that the Global Cyber Alliance provides. Take it away, Gill.
Thank you, and hi, everybody. I'll just start. Oh, here we go. Right, excellent. So the Global Cyber Alliance Cybersecurity Toolkit for Small Business. It really is a toolkit that's specifically designed for small businesses, kindly sponsored by Mastercard and Intel, and it's addressing the basic cyber hygiene that you've heard all about, both from Rebecca and Monty today. Implementing these steps can actually help protect your business and reduce your cyber risk by up to 85%, and that's mapped against globally recognized standards and best practices. It's available in 5 languages, and as we've said, it really does focus on cyber hygiene, basic cyber hygiene. It's a compendium of free and practical tools and resources that are all there within the toolkit for you to work your way through or just dive into wherever you want to. The address is on the website there, gcatoolkit.org/smallbusiness. And I do want to reiterate, it can reduce your risk of cyber attack by up to 85%. So the toolkit is split really into 6 different toolboxes, as we call them, or steps. You can either be guided through them or you can dive in at any point. But first of all, the important thing initially to do is to understand what's in your network, what you have, because you cannot protect what you don't know you have. So that first step is to take an inventory. What do you have from a hardware, from a software, from an account and application perspective? What sensitive information do you hold? Where do you hold it? And pull an inventory together so you know exactly what you have where. And if there's stuff that you no longer use, then just get rid of it, delete it, remove it from the network. Try and make sure that you're not having IoT devices, for example, that they're not on your corporate network because they're notoriously insecure. Once you understand what you have, we move on, and Rebecca and Monty both recommended the updating your defenses, as we call it, the importance of software updates. And really to reiterate this, if we look back to May 2017, the WannaCry ransomware attack, I don't know if any of you remember that, but that was down to a flaw in the Microsoft operating system. Those that were running XP, Windows XP, which was no longer supported, or those that hadn't applied the patch that had been readily available for 2 months, were at risk and were vulnerable to attack. Anyone that had applied that particular patch was safe. And within 24 hours of that attack being launched, over 230,000 computer systems across 150 countries were affected by WannaCry. And this led to over $4 billion in losses. Now, that wasn't necessarily targeting a specific company or a large organisation. The NHS in the UK was very, very badly hit by that particular operating system. You would just have been affected because of the operating systems that you were using, because of the software or the hardware or whatever it might be, because you happen to be using that was potentially making you vulnerable to attack. And they're automated attacks as well. So they'll just be scanning the internet, as Rebecca was alluding to, trying to find these vulnerabilities. And once they find that within your, and that may be in your organization, then clearly you're at risk. So running the latest levels of software, implementing automatic updates, any data that you hold, particularly that sensitive data or that with personally identifiable information on it, encrypt that data whilst it's at rest. And also there's some scans in there that help check websites as well. So there's tools within Update Your Defences that will enable you to run automatic updates, that will help you encrypt data on your hard drives, and also will scan your websites. Moving on, again, we're reiterating the need for strong and unique passwords. So providing guidance there. And also there's Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator in there that you can download onto your phones. And then guidance as to where you can find the relevant instructions to implement two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, as it's also referred to, across those accounts. And just looking back in terms of those passwords and stolen passwords, one stolen password that came into a breach was, according to reports, was responsible in part for the Colonial Pipeline breach that took place in May of this year. Now that shut down half of the US fuel supply. It impacted $2 million in ransomware, plus other losses as well. And that was the reuse of one password on a system that two-factor or multi-factor authentication was not available for. And once the attackers had that first intrusion into the network, they're then able to work across the network, working out laterally where that most sensitive and most important information is held, and then they can then decide what they do with it. So the need for those strong, unique passwords and also two-factor or multi-factor authentication, that's covered in that particular toolbox or step. Moving on, we've mentioned again antivirus, and also a service in here known as Quad 9, or it's DNS security. So a simple change to the settings in the settings on your laptop or your phone or on router. And when you do go onto specific websites, it will check whether or not that particular website is harboring malicious content, and if it is, then it will block you from accessing that. Now there are I read a report a while ago that up to 200,000 new websites are created each day, and of those 200,000 websites, up to 70% of those may well be being used for malicious purpose. So having a DNS filter or a DNS firewall that you can use does help protect you against accessing those known malicious websites. And then, as we've spoken about earlier, the need to have good backup as well, because that can help in the recovery of your business if you do suffer not only a cyber attack, but let's say an alternative natural disaster as well. So strong backups, and importantly both on and offline backups, because in some cases what we find as well is if you do suffer a cyber attack, then the backup may also be affected as well. Then we move on to look at protecting your email and reputation, what we call DMARC and website checks as well. That's a little bit more complex, but that protects against other people impersonating your website. What I'm going to do now, and I'm conscious that time is running out, is just give you a few slides and screenshots of the toolkit itself. So that the homepage, there's always a fast access bar down the left-hand side, so you can either just dive straight into those particular toolboxes you want, or you can be guided through those 6 steps by pressing the blue button on the left-hand side. If you want to go and have some additional material, we have a learning portal where you can access mini courses, a handbook and a video introduction as well. So however you like to learn and develop, we've got an option there for you. Clicking on that blue button or diving into any of those toolboxes down the left hand side, every single toolbox has a similar look and feel. So again, we've got a video and we've got some text-based information as well that you can look at to introduce that toolbox. And then you move down to the tools. Each tool, we provide you with information as to what it is, whether it will access a third-party downloadable tool. It might be instructions, it might be a scan. It tells you what kind of level of IT expertise you would need, and then also an indication of how long typically you may need to implement that particular tool. If you do have any questions at all, then we also have a community forum that you can access. We're on hand to help you with anything, or you may just want to see how other people have maybe used that particular tool, and there may be some additional videos and guidance there as well. So that's the community forum. And then I mentioned the learning portal, initially understanding cyber risk, how that relates to your business. And then there's a mini course. They typically take about 10-15 minutes each. They have additional downloadable PDFs as well. And they go sort of hand in hand with each of those particular toolboxes. Finally, as I say, it's designed specifically for small businesses. Clear, actionable guidance. Everything in there is free. It does address the most common cyber risks that are affecting small businesses today. And there's been a common theme throughout Rebecca, Monty, and myself today. And it focuses on that. And as we see that failure to perform basic cyber hygiene really does play quite a high proportion in many attacks that we see now. So yeah, that's the Cybersecurity Toolkit for small business. It does actually enable you and provide you with tools to implement a lot of these recommendations and suggestions that we've been covering today. I'm going to hand back to Gina now. So thank you very much, and any questions, I think Gina's covering those. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gill, and I really appreciate your presentation. And the bottom line is that the Global Cyber Alliance and the Cyber Readiness Institute both provide amazing resources to help small businesses get secure. And there's a kind of a strange, okay, I'm trying to do too many things at one time. There we go. There's a strange saying that says, eat the elephant one bite at a time, which is kind of disgusting, but it makes a great point. Your cybersecurity journey really is just taking small steps that build, do them regularly, use the resources that are out there, and you can create this great, secure cyber ecosystem. But it does take step by step, and that way it's not so overwhelming also. So I am happy to present the Mastercard Trust Center. And we've seen all these, heard about all these statistics out there about small businesses. It really, really is serious business. Even if it's an uncomfortable place for you to be, it is important that you secure your business. And to me, on this slide, the most important statistic is the one in the middle. 95% of cyber breaches are caused by human error. And the reason why that's important is because it shows you and your employees, colleagues can be in control, because you can change human behaviors. You can change the tools that you use to get cyber secure. And we have the resources that have been already presented. So here's the challenge. It takes 20 years or whatever to build the reputation of your business, and a cyber attack can take it down. And think about what you have thought about businesses that you've maybe dealt with in the past that have had a cyber breach. Whether it's ages ago with Target or wherever, when a business has a cyber attack, it makes you question if you can trust them as a business, because they may have your data. So the Mastercard Trust Center provides this centralized access to free education, resources, and tools. Plus, right now we have one low-cost product, cyber insurance, and it's all designed with small and medium-sized businesses in mind. We want to bring the Trust Center to every small business everywhere to help you get secure. So the way this trust center is designed is rather unique because the content is divided by how much cybersecurity expertise you as an individual have when you want to come in. Because if you don't know much about cybersecurity and you go to a site that has a lot of language you don't understand, as far as the terminology, has really complex stuff, you're going to turn around and run away. However, if the opposite happens, if you are a master of cybersecurity and you go to something that's too easy, you're going to run away. So we have that for every level of expertise. And so you choose where you want to go. The resources are in various formats, podcasts from mostly 1.5 minutes long for the podcast, some great videos, research, white papers, infographics, and toolkits. And the content is not just Mastercard. In fact, we have content from the Cyber Readiness Institute, from the Global Cyber Alliance, and these other organizations, plus many other sites. So we curate what we put in there based on what we think is the best materials and things that can help your business. So ask yourself the question, is your business sufficiently protected against cyber threats? If the answer to that is no, based on everything you've heard today and what you may know already, then you really need to start that cybersecurity journey. So I'm going to take you on a very quick tour. We only have a few minutes left of the Mastercard Trust Center, just so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll have a minute or so for questions, a couple questions. Just want you to see what this looks like. So this is the Mastercard Trust Center. And this is what I want you to see, is where are you on your cybersecurity learning journey? If you are just starting out, you'll go here to learn the basics. And within each of the learning journeys, we have 3 categories of information: cybersecurity core concepts, cyber attack methods, and help protect your business. And that includes best practices and also tools. So we start out very simply. What is a cybercrime? What is a cybersecurity incident? Why is it important? Some of the lingo. And then here we go to the Cyber Readiness Program. And one of the most important places to start is actually from the GCA. And that is, you need to track what devices you have, so that, and you just click on this and you go out to see that. So, and lastly, on our mini tour, if you go to the bottom of the home page, you can actually access both the Cyber Readiness Program from CRI and the GCA Toolkit. So I encourage you to take action to protect your business. Looks like we have 1 minute left.
Well, we have as much time as you guys have, because there's quite a few questions here. So if you guys are ready, I'd like to ask a few questions for you. I'm going to ask my question first because, it's my show, I guess. But so if you mentioned, and I totally agree with about your 2-factor authentication, let's say on your email account for sure. I have to manage probably 5 email accounts, and I have an email aggregator, and even though those 5 accounts have 2-factor authentications on them, the aggregator just jumps right into them. Is that a bad practice?
It's not the best, let's put it this way. I'm not a great fan of having all your digital eggs in one basket, I have to say. I think that some data held in the physical environment that you input manually is always a good way of providing security for yourself. If everything is digital and it's accessible, particularly on one device, you lose your device or it gets stolen, then you've pretty much got everything compromised.
Okay, I kind of knew the answer, but I wanted to ask that.
Could I just add, actually, and just in
Sure.
terms of email, that is a really, really important one to have a really, really strong password, because in many cases, that could potentially give access to a whole host of other accounts, because quite often you can then go to another account, I've forgotten my password, and it is quite often that it will come back to that email address that you're using. So having a really strong password and the multi-factor authentication on that email account is really important.
Okay. What do you guys think about a password generator and, you know, the password aggregator software?
I personally am not a fan. As I say, if you have all your digital information in one place, it's not a good thing. I am still a big advocate of having information, whether it be written down or whatever. The chances of you having your house broken into and your password physically stolen, and then somebody breaking into the same person breaking into your device online, is incredibly low. So I know that a lot of tech people advocate password vaults and things like that, but even they have been proven to be breached as well.
Well, that makes me feel good, Rebecca. So my sticky note with the password that's sitting on my monitor is okay then, right?
It's not visible. And don't have a book that says passwords either.
Right. And remember your camera might be able to pick it up if depending on the angle. But in all seriousness, though, I do want to just highlight one additional point. So, thinking about your passwords, oftentimes people can feel overwhelmed when trying to think of a very complex or sophisticated password. And so we really advocate for a passphrase, right? So thinking about some phrase that you see value in, right? That is easily something that you would associate with, and then replacing certain characters to make it a little more complex. So we want long, strong passwords, but we also want passwords that are not overly difficult for you to remember, such that you're constantly having to go through the process of updating it. So we advocate for a 15-character passphrase, and I think if you're using that kind of model to say, okay, well, what's a key phrase that I could easily remember, and then replace certain characters, then that might be a useful approach.
Nice. Lindsay, hi, Lindsay. I see you all the time. Glad you're here again. She says, when you have been hacked and found your videos on other sites, who do you report that to?
It's usually the moderator of the site. So it depends. Admins are not often great necessarily. If it's a big corporation, they're a lot better. But if it's not such a big company, then it might be a struggle. There are companies that we use, like Mark Monitor, that take down content that you don't want there. But then quite often you have to put a justification case in and have to prove that you're the owner of them as well. So there's no one easy way of doing it. It really depends on the site and how proactive their admin is.
Thank you. David asks, hello, David. David owns a really nice drive-in theater. He wants to know how much of the owner's liability, if any, is assumed by the credit card processor, like the Squares, the Stripes of the world.
It depends on the circumstances, but if you are the business that's been hacked, then they have no liability around that. You are fined for not being secure in the first place. Usually, Mastercard and Visa only investigate companies that transact more than 30,000 credit cards per annum. If you're under that, then the investigation falls to your acquirer or your processor to make sure that you're secure and you get back in business. But Mastercard and Visa will fine companies that are not in compliance with PCI, which is the industry standard that you must be in compliance with if you are accepting credit cards.
Thanks, Rebecca. Connie wants to know, how safe is cloud space?
Well, we advocate that businesses consider moving to cloud storage as an alternative to USB and removable media use. I think right now the security of the cloud is definitely a focus of the providers, And I think what's important to know is you as a business have an understanding of what we call, asset inventory, right? And so what are those business critical operations and then the software that support them? If you have a better understanding of that, then you're better able to have that kind of conversation with your cloud provider representative about kind of how they're going about securing it. But I would still say it's more secure than the traditional method of using, getting a free USB at a conference and then going back and using it within your organization.
Okay. So David also asks, he has his employees and sort of use their cell phones to clock in and out. Is that a bad idea?
It depends. It depends on what they're connected to be perfectly honest. If the cell phone is compromised and then it's used on the system, then there is a bigger risk. It's not an easy answer, that one, unfortunately.
Okay. Connie asked this question, and you kind of answered it, but I'll ask it again. Is there a customizable cybersecurity policy or template that she can find?
So with CRI, we provide what we call our playbook, our cyber readiness playbook. And she can access that simply by going to bcyberready.com and then and taking part in our program. When she downloads that playbook, what she will have are a set of templates where she can as easily as put her name and her organization's name in certain areas. But also it challenges her to think about kind of, again, coming back to what are those business critical operations and the types of software that she's using. And we have a training schedule included in there. So yes, there is a template out there, Connie. You can visit bcyberready.com to access it.
Okay. David has another question. He says, as a movie theater, we receive a single-use USB with advertisements weekly via FedEx from a broker. If we can get them to send the same files via an email attachment or download link, is that actually better?
Right. So, I mean, when you're transferring critical files through email, you want to consider whether or not your email provider offers the encryption option, and then you want to actually turn that on and use encryption if and when possible. So I would say transferring it using encryption is definitely more secure than potentially using a USB that has malware on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lindsay asks, is there any way to recover stolen data?
It depends. If it's personally identifiable information, no, it's indelible. If it's out on the web, trying to get it back is futile. It's probably been copied hundreds of times by various cyber criminals. Credit card information, yes, we can make the credit cards worth nothing as soon as we know that they've been compromised. We contact the issuer of the credit card because we at the end of the day are just the brand. We don't give you your credit card, so we contact them, say the card's been compromised, and they will issue you with a new credit card, which will have different information to the original one that's been lost.
Okay. And then is YubiKey or other device any better than two-factor authentication?
Well, I mean, I don't know, Jill, if you want to jump in, but I would say using a tool like a YubiKey definitely is a way to have more security. That said, I think Rebecca mentioned this before. There are examples of where that type of technology has been compromised as well. And so it really is a matter of trying to make it as difficult as possible for a cyber criminal to gain access to your accounts using your credentials, right? And so that's everything from a long, strong password, right? 15-character passphrase. Using if your computer or your laptop supports it, the fingerprint technology or the scan with your camera. So just thinking about what tools do you already have at your discretion, and then implementing those to make it that much more difficult for a cyber criminal to gain access to your accounts.
Thank you.
And any form of two-factor authentication, whether that be SMS, whether it be an app, authenticator app, or, for example, YubiKey as well, a sort of a hardware device, is good. I'd certainly of those three, the lowest option would be the SMS option. So the Authenticator app or a hardware device would be preferable to just using SMS. But all of them are good.
Yeah, thank you. Teresa asks, she says she's a mompreneur who includes her daughter in making products on some of their social media videos. From what she hears, not a good thing, right?
Yeah, you want to limit your exposure, to be perfectly honest, particularly when you're starting out. You know, it's interesting. I always use HGTV as an example of, media exposure. A lot of these people got to be on HGTV because they were on YouTube and Instagram and things like that. But now everybody knows every single minutiae and detail of their lives. Their cyber profile must be an absolute nightmare to handle. So the less information you can give away personally, that is really what you want to aim for. It doesn't even need to be real information that you're giving away. You know, you can have a fantasy land of family life that you're selling. It's just be careful, because what you put out there, you can't get back.
Yeah, all right. That's awesome. If you sell on a platform like Shopify, is your and your customer data better protected?
It depends.
Right.
Monty.
Well, I was just going to say, and Rebecca, Jill, jump in, but I was just going to say, anytime you're working with another company, a third party providing a software or service, it's just really important that, one, you are prepared to have that kind of conversation around security, and you communicate to them that security is important to you, but also ask those questions. Some of the questions that we've raised as a part of this webinar, ask those questions of your provider to understand how they will respond in the event of an incident. Do they have a specific number or person or unit that they want you to contact? And just have that kind of awareness, I think, is the most important thing. But I agree completely. It depends. It really does.
Wow.
And I think it's important as well. You know, a lot of these hosting providers, there's a lot of things that are not set by default, like things like auto SSL. So your security encryption is not often set by default. You have to enable that. So you don't exonerate yourself by using a third-party platform. You just reduce or diminish your risk.
Gotcha. Peggy asks, what to do when you get a fraud alert?
So it depends on what the fraud alert is. Right. But if it's to do with a chargeback, then you want to stop the goods going out if you can as quickly as possible. You want to identify who the customer is that could potentially have incurred that fraud alert. You also want to see if they've got any history with your company as well, because you probably want to check back on what else they've been doing with your company. And then you want to reach out as quickly as possible and get the matter resolved, because it's not something that you really want going on for long, especially if there's a chargeback involved.
So Teresa just says she just joined Cyber Readiness program and says thanks a lot to you guys.
Thank you, Teresa.
Yeah. So that's about all the questions, and I've kept you guys way longer than you anticipated. So I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with us and sharing all your knowledge. You guys have been awesome. This has been so eye-opening for me, and I'm ripping my Post-it note down here in just a few minutes from my monitor. So thank you so much, Monty. Thank you, Rebecca, Jilly. I really appreciate it. And Gina had to leave it. She had another presentation to do. So I thank you guys all. Hope to have you guys back again, because this is something everybody needs to be aware of. So thanks again. And we'll see everybody next Wednesday. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining today's webinar. At the Kentucky SBDC, we know small businesses are the heart of our economy. That's why our goal is to help business owners start, grow, and succeed in Kentucky. Find out more about how our no-cost business coaching, training, and resources can help your business. Visit us at KentuckySBDC.com.